Welcome, everyone. I am here with Kishan. Today, we are going to talk all things content. Kishan, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeremy, for this. I think I'd want to kind of name this conversation more about every company being a content company, particularly, right? We've had a very strong thesis. I heard Gary Vee saying sometime every company is a media company. We believe every company is a content company at the end of it. And like we are at a very interesting juncture where there is like crossroads of strategy, technology, and talent that together are building up content engines for companies. Content marketing is something we have heard all small to large brands, like the largest of enterprises, saying, hey, we want to do content marketing, but they don't really know how to do it, basically. And again, content is, I feel, like an overabused term now. Everything is content at the end of it. So idea would be to kind of share insights on how does the strategy, technology, talent, tripartite motion works when it order to build a content engine, particularly, right? So let me quickly start with, first of all, telling more about the strategy part of it, followed by technology, and then the talent part of it, and then I'm going to kind of merge all of them, tell about like amalgamation of the three, right? So on the strategy part of the content, I think a very big insight that we've gained over our experiences in general is that there are problems in a company, and there are different levels of problems in a company. So there are business goals, then there are marketing goals. So the business goals eventually translate into marketing goals, and the marketing goals can then further get translated into content goals, right? Now, for example, for every piece of content to be done, you ought to marry it to a business goal. You cannot just say that I want to create a great viral campaign. I mean, you can create a couple of great viral campaigns for like top funnel awareness, maybe in that case, and that awareness is actually a business goal. It's a top funnel metric that's there, right? But a lot of times, generally for smaller companies, the excitement is about, hey, we want to just create a viral campaign out of it. For larger companies, it's about, hey, because we are in the compliance restriction, we just want to do something, but we really don't know what, and then we are in the guardrails of it. So my fundamental first principles thought would be, you figure out a business goal that you're trying to solve in, and then you bring it down to a marketing, further down to a content problem. Otherwise, there's no point in doing content marketing. And of course, every business problem, in some sense or the other, as an offshoot or a corollary, has a content solution for sure, right? In that case, so that's one part I would want to look at. The second part, in strategies, there are two kinds of strategies that we look at particularly, right? There is one side of that, I put it this way, there's a left brain strategy and a right brain strategy, particularly, right? The left brain strategy is more to do with the analytics part of things, basically, where you ought to kind of marry the data of whatever record functions that you have for that particular content piece. So say, for example, if you're actually launching a new social media post, for example, or you're launching a new blog, you ought to see what all your past blogs or your social media posts have performed, what is getting spikes, what not, and there are more than enough tools that are available to kind of analyze those things, right? If you don't have any previous records and you're trying to do something for the first time, at least have a marriage of what other companies who have tried to do it for the first time or who have tried to do it earlier have kind of seek from it, right? So the bigger point is that when it comes to analytical strategy, you got to see the past and you design, or you maybe hypothesize a future, so that you, all your efforts that are going to come in from the right brain, kind of take you to that future. A lot of times I've seen the largest creative houses in the world kind of have a great right brain, and maybe they're the most creative people in the world, but just because they don't understand the maths of it, they might make the most beautiful campaign in the world, but that doesn't make us lead to the north star metric we're trying to reach from content, right? So I think a big part of it is the leverage strategy has to marry with historical data, figure out solutions, and marry a north star metric, what are you trying to achieve, and then move to the right side brain in saying, hey, now what all are the creative aspects of it. I don't want to budge a lot on the creativity aspect of it. I'm not a great creative myself particularly, but I can definitely say that the right teams, it's a lot more subjective. You got to understand your audience cohort, their consumption preferences, all of it together. But I think one big learning, a very first principles thought, again, I've learned over there, is that you cannot make someone go out of their sight of thought to appreciate a campaign that you have done. I mean, you can make them reverse think on something. You can, so for example, imagine this way: you were running a straight line, and suddenly you realize that the line you were running is getting curved. The person gets disturbed in that sight of thought, basically, overall. What you can do is you can definitely bring in a very beautiful view in the line of sight that you were running in, basically, and make the person feel surprised. The element of surprise doesn't mean you disturb the person, basically. A lot of brands are not able to kind of marry this well. I don't know if I made a lot of sense with what I mentioned, basically, but you ought to kind of build a positive surprise for a customer in order for them to remember you. In this case, a lot of brands are not able to do that really well, right? I don't want to name a few brands. I definitely have some brands in my head which cannot do, like, which not doing this too well. But I think just imagine this way: when you are off the road, right? You're on a highway in the US. Imagine this way: you see a couple of billboards over there. They don't make sense basically, and if it's taking an effort of more than, say, couple of seconds for you to even realize what was written over there, the marketing is not helpful over there, right? So the right brain has to marry the left brain in this way. I put it out that way, and probably, I mean, that's been one learning on the strategy side for me, right? I just want to focus on one more part. The largest of the creative houses in the world, the Publicis, the WPPs, the Omnicoms of the world, do an X amount of revenue from the marketing strategy that they do, basically. Okay. If you look at it, the Bain, BCG, McKinsey's also have their marketing and consulting practice, and they do much more revenue than these largest consulting house, than these largest creative houses. And not mentioning the fact, Accenture Song last year reported a revenue of close to around an $18 billion in total. The sole reason for that being they're actually able to marry the left brain and right brain together. So that first principles thought process married with the right set of creativity is ideally what a content strategy looks like. So I'll leave that thought open for everyone to kind of ponder upon. Coming to the technology part, the beast in the room, AI, generative AI, over abused again. A lot of it, we've been just speaking about it. It's become more like a norm on saying, hey, let's use it. But I just have a very, very strong insight on saying generative AI has to be used where there's a means to an end, basically. So when I say means to an end, particularly, so how I put it this way, I read a Bain report very recently, and it was very interesting. They kind of put it this way: generative AI can be used in two ways. Either you use generative AI as a service, or you use generative AI as a component to a longer workflow, basically, right? Generative AI as a service, overused, but still not a part of workflows. And that's where we have seen a lot of drop off. In fact, we were amidst the first few users of GPT-3 in the world. We launched a product ourselves, got almost 500,000 users on the product in a span of like 6 to 7 months. We thought we were the greatest people in the world. AI fascination, no performance marketing, grew up really well. We had to shut the product down later. I mean, we have to integrate into a larger workflow because we realized that the usage of the product effectively comes in as a part of fascination in the first blow, basically, but doesn't sustain itself later on. So I mean, I ask this question always when I am speaking in panel discussions or to people, how many of you have used generative AI once? Then I ask them 5 times, then 10 times, then 100 times, then 1,000 times, and exactly the number of days how GPT-3 is old enough. And I see drop of hands immediately coming in. So I think the second part, which is using generative AI as a workflow, as a component to a longer workflow, where I believe it's more an augmentation ecosystem rather than a creation ecosystem in itself. That is going to be like a beautiful part in which how AI is going to be integrated in the long haul, in how people have been doing it. Like a couple of very small examples on that being, okay, let me put it this way, right? You might not even, like, you might write your short form copies when you're writing your Google ad copies, maybe using generative AI. That is fine. But when I'm writing a blog, I might not want to write the entire blog using generative AI. I might just want to write the skeleton of it and then kind of flesh it out. So it's more like a thought bouncing tool that I'm trying to make out of it, right? So that's just one small use case of it. Again, there was a big battle about, hey, AI or humans, or are my jobs at stake, or the BAU mundane jobs are gonna go away. I'll tell you this way: when Grammarly was launched, every editor in the world thought their job is gone. And if you look at it over a period of time, Grammarly has become like the best friends of editors, basically. So what Grammarly is doing currently for them is effectively an augmentation tool for them to work faster. So earlier, if they were taking like a couple of hours to edit a piece of content, now they're going to take like half an hour in that case. So that 75% efficiency that a Grammarly kind of brings in is what generative AI in the long haul is going to do to us, right? So the technology part is interesting. One more big use case of generative AI when it comes to content flywheels is also analyzing your past data. A lot of companies haven't been able to do it really well. I'll give you a couple of examples. We at Pepper have built a product called as CMP. We call it as a content marketing platforms. Basically, in content marketing platforms, we just feed in all the previous trend histories of every single keyword and the traffic we have got from it, and I can actually figure out which keywords I want to focus on next immediately. I don't need to use generative AI to write only the beautiful copies across the board. I can use it for a lot of data analysis that I want. I can use it for a lot of summaries I want. The other day a customer told us, hey, this is a policy document that we have. We want to generate a blog out of it. The policy document was close to around 17 pages long. We had no time to kind of read through the entire policy document until the time we were at page 12. We would forget what was written at page 2. We just fed it in. We said, hey, figure out all the important pointers that are mentioned for the age group of A to B. and it just fed in. That's good enough for me. So again, an augmentation tool